This is the most diabolical thing ever happened in the history of the monarchy.
Recently, a disturbing rumor has been spreading through the cold stone hallways of Buckingham Palace at remarkable speed. Even the most experienced courtiers, who have lived through countless royal scandals, now refuse to discuss it above a whisper. A trusted palace insider claims that something which should never have existed has surfaced in recent days, and it reaches the very core of the late Queen Elizabeth II's legacy.
What has made many within the royal household deeply uneasy is the name repeatedly whispered in private conversations is not Queen Camilla's, but that of her son Tom Parker Bowles. And the person believed to have uncovered what she was never supposed to find is none other than Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, Prince Edward's wife, a royal long regarded as completely removed from palace power struggles.
Sources claim Sophie departed Tom Parker Bowles' private home in visible shock. No comment, no explanation, only prolonged silence followed by actions that have unsettled the royal household. That same evening, Tom is believed to have placed an urgent call to his mother, while several doors within the royal residences, long kept closed, are now being guarded more heavily than ever.
What has remained concealed for so many years? Why is Sophie unable to pretend she saw nothing? And who will be drawn into this secret next?
The towering crystal chandeliers cast faint trembling light across the marble floor, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. It was one of those rare evenings when Buckingham Palace rested in near-perfect silence, a silence carrying both royal grandeur and the burden of secrets never meant to be spoken. Along the corridor leading to the Queen's private offices, a slender figure walked without making a sound. It was Agnes, a maid in her 50s, her hair neatly pinned back her face, marked by nearly 30 years of quiet service. Agnes was more than a servant. She was part of the palace's endless machinery, someone who had witnessed more royal turmoil than any newspaper could ever reveal. She remained deeply devoted to the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II, whom she had served personally for 20 years. To Agnes, the Queen's belongings were never ordinary possessions. They represented the soul of the monarchy history, preserved in gold and precious jewels. That night, she was completing her final round, ensuring every lamp had been switched off and every door secured after the Queen had retired to her room. As she walked past a beautifully carved oak door, Agnes stopped instantly. The room beyond a small private study should have been locked and silent hours earlier. Queen Camilla, who became queen after Elizabeth's death in 2023, should already have been asleep. Instead, Agnes heard the Queen's low, urgent, unmistakably authoritative voice. The words slipped through the narrow gap like icy blades. "Must be moved tonight. No one can know. They go directly to Tom's house, never through the official vaults."
Agnes immediately understood what they meant.
A few days earlier, she had seen an internal inventory listing the late Queen's most valuable uncatalogued relics: coronation jewels, private letters, and above all, the official jewel box, the highest symbol of female royal authority. As the remaining fragments of conversation reached her ears, the truth became painfully clear. Camilla did not simply intend to keep them safe. She intended to claim them. By concealing Elizabeth's final symbols of authority inside her son, Tom Parker Bowles' private residence, she was making a bold move, taking possession of physical objects to strengthen her political and symbolic power. Whatever changes came to the family's balance of influence, she intended to remain the one holding the key to the past. Agnes stepped back into the shadows of the corridor. Cold sweat covered her skin. She immediately recognized the terrible danger of what she had overheard. This was not ordinary greed. It was a betrayal of the royal legacy itself. If exposed, it could shake the British monarchy to its core. If she spoke out, she would be directly accusing the Queen, a decision that could cost her position, her reputation, and perhaps the peaceful years she had left. Silence had always been the rule every servant lived by, yet remaining silent now would also make her complicit. As she struggled with the decision, the familiar sound of tires crunching across the gravel echoed outside the main entrance. Looking through a tall window, Agnes saw two women step from a car. One was Princess Anne, the late Queen's famously dutiful daughter, who always placed responsibility above everything else. The other was Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. As Prince Edward's wife, the Queen's youngest son, Sophie, was admired for her elegance, her dedication to charity, and above all, the sincere relationship she had shared with Elizabeth. That evening, she and Anne had arranged a long-planned meeting to discuss their joint charitable trusts. Sophie's arrival struck Agnes immediately. Sophie had not only been one of the late Queen's closest confidants, but also a true symbol of integrity and duty. If anyone could understand the devastating significance of these stolen relics, it would be Sophie. Agnes remained still in the old stone corridor, the cold wall against her back. She could not turn away. She could not allow personal ambition to overshadow the legacy she had sworn to defend.
Her eyes followed Sophie as she entered the great hall beside Anne. The Duchess's calm, determined presence gave Agnes unexpected strength. She made her decision. She would place loyalty to the royal legacy above her own safety. Turning away from the study door, she walked toward the hall where Sophie now stood. A bold, lonely, and dangerous decision had been made within the palace darkness. The illusion of peace had been broken, and that night an irreversible chain of events began. Agnes walked through the dim corridors as if every portrait of her ancestors lining the walls was watching her guilty steps, guilty because she was about to bring the crown's most dangerous secret into the open. Ahead stood the door to the small anteroom where Princess Anne and the Duchess of Edinburgh were meeting, like the entrance to her destiny. She had to act before Queen Camilla and those assisting her could finish removing the relics. Sophie sat gracefully at the tea table, quietly reviewing pages of charity reports. Since Queen Elizabeth II's passing, she had accepted countless responsibilities with quiet dedication, earning respect for her integrity and refusal to be shaken by unfounded rumors. The moment Agnes appeared pale-faced, weary-eyed, yet determined after nearly 30 years of service, Sophie immediately sensed something was terribly wrong. A veteran maid like Agnes would never interrupt a private royal meeting unless the matter was truly serious. At first, Agnes remained silent. She simply asked to come closer, then leaned towards Sophie and whispered everything in one hurried breath. She described exactly where she had been standing, who had spoken, and most importantly, where the relics were being taken, the private residence of Queen Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles. Sophie's first reaction was cautious, almost doubtful. Accusing the reigning queen was almost unimaginable. If the claim proved false, it would ruin the person making it. But once Tom Parker Bowles' name came up again together with the fact that the relics had already been removed from the royal vaults, the doubt in Sophie's eyes turned into cold alarm. Few people understood the historical and symbolic importance of those objects better than she did. They were not personal belongings. They were royal emblems passed down through the crown itself. Taking them outside palace protection and hiding them in a private citizen's home, even if that citizen was the Queen's son, crossed every acceptable boundary. It was a direct betrayal of the royal legacy, something Queen Elizabeth would never have tolerated. Sophie now stood at a painful moral crossroads. Taking action meant confronting Camilla directly and triggering an unprecedented crisis within both the monarchy and the family. Relationships would be torn apart and her own reputation would come under relentless scrutiny. Remaining silent, however, would make her part of a betrayal against the principles of duty, history, and loyalty to Elizabeth that she held above all else. Her conscience would not permit that. After a long silence, she reached a bold decision. She would not investigate quietly on her own. She would bring the matter before the one person with ultimate authority. Sophie immediately requested a private audience with King Charles. They met alone behind the closed doors of the king's private study. Charles, still trying to stabilize his reign after years of turmoil, listened without showing much emotion, though the shock in his eyes was impossible to hide. Sophie presented only the facts, focusing entirely on the illegal transfer and avoiding any speculation about motive. Following a long silence, the king made his decision. Whatever personal feelings he had toward Queen Camilla, his responsibility to the crown and to his late mother came first. He approved a discreet investigation on the condition that nothing reached the public.
He also quietly instructed the head of royal protection to assign a carefully selected team of trusted officers to accompany Sophie. Their mission was to protect the Duchess while she confronted those guarding the secret and to allow the king to verify every development himself. Sophie left the king's study looking calm, though her resolve had hardened. She knew there was no turning back. This was no longer about personal honor. It was about protecting history itself. Her vehicle, discreetly followed by a royal protection car, left the palace under cover of darkness, heading toward Tom Parker Bowles's private villa, where the royal symbols were believed to be hidden. The passing streetlights reflected across the windows, briefly illuminating the Duchess's unwavering expression.
The car carried the Duchess of Edinburgh through the darkness to a secluded lane in Berkshire, where Tom Parker Bowles's country villa stood hidden among the trees. The silence offered no reassurance. Instead, it felt like a perfect cover, hiding something deeply wrong. King Charles's protection team had already positioned themselves around the estate, remaining unseen and waiting only for Sophie's signal. Their silent presence was a reminder of how much was now at stake. Sophie stepped out of the car. Her dark cashmere coat concealed her slight figure, giving her a calm but commanding presence beneath the pale moonlight. She personally led the search team, accompanied by 3 plainclothes protection officers and a senior curator from the royal collection. They carried the equipment needed to search and secure evidence, but their greatest authority came from the king's unspoken approval. Entering the private residence of the Queen's son was something no one had ever done before, and everyone felt the weight of it. The villa was spacious, combining modern comfort with rustic design, the kind of home expected of a successful food writer born into privilege. From the outside, nothing suggested that it concealed royal secrets. An expert quietly unlocked the front door. Inside, everything appeared warm and ordinary. Both floors displayed tasteful luxury, filled with books, family photographs, and the familiar disorder of everyday life. The search began systematically. Every room cabinet and drawer was checked one after another. Upstairs, they found nothing beyond clothing documents and ordinary household belongings. The silence became increasingly uncomfortable. The protection officers exchanged uncertain looks, while the curator's expression tightened as doubt slowly grew. If nothing was discovered, Sophie would bear the greatest blame, and Agnes would likely be dismissed as a liar. Time seemed to slow. Every minute added more pressure to Sophie's shoulders. She was risking her reputation, her family relationships, perhaps even her future within the monarchy. She could almost feel the growing skepticism around her. Failure would leave her branded as a reckless figure who had damaged the monarchy during one of its most fragile moments. Standing in the center of the drawing room, she carefully studied every detail, searching for the smallest irregularity. The house's complete normality had become its most suspicious feature. One officer continued examining the villa's original architectural drawings, their pages yellowed with age. He frowned, looked over them again, then suddenly stopped. There was a subtle inconsistency beneath the kitchen and pantry. Appeared a section of floor space marked on the original plans, but missing from every later version, an empty area sealed off after construction.
He immediately called Sophie over. The team gathered in the kitchen. Hidden behind a large wine cabinet, they discovered a small steel door built flush into the wall, nearly impossible to notice, securely locked and expertly concealed. It led downward into a space that officially did not exist. Sophie instantly knew they had found what they were looking for.
The air inside the kitchen became unbearably heavy. They were no longer searching for missing valuables. They were standing before physical evidence of a conspiracy. Sophie gave the order. One officer carefully worked on the lock using specialized tools. The sharp scrape of metal echoed through the silent house. When the lock finally released, Sophie did not move immediately. She took a slow breath, preparing herself for whatever lay beneath. She looked across her team. Every trace of uncertainty had disappeared, replaced by tense anticipation. All of them knew that beyond the steel door waited the truth behind Queen Camilla's hidden ambitions. The car carried the Duchess of Edinburgh through the darkness to a secluded lane in Berkshire, where Tom Parker Bowles's country villa stood hidden among the trees. The silence offered no reassurance. Instead, it felt like a perfect cover, hiding something deeply wrong. King Charles's protection team had already positioned themselves around the estate, remaining unseen and waiting only for Sophie's signal. Their silent presence was a reminder of how much was now at stake.
Sophie stepped out of the car. Her dark cashmere coat concealed her slight figure, giving her a calm but commanding presence beneath the pale moonlight. She personally led the search team, accompanied by 3 plainclothes protection officers and a senior curator from the royal collection. They carried the equipment needed to search and secure evidence, but their greatest authority came from the king's unspoken approval. Entering the private residence The villa was spacious, combining modern comfort with rustic design, the kind of home expected of a successful food writer born into privilege. From the outside, nothing suggested that it concealed royal secrets. An expert quietly unlocked the front door. Inside, everything appeared warm and ordinary. Both floors displayed tasteful luxury, filled with books, family photographs, and the familiar disorder of everyday life. The search began systematically. Every room cabinet and drawer was checked one after another. Upstairs, they found nothing beyond clothing documents and ordinary household belongings. The silence became increasingly uncomfortable. The protection officers exchanged uncertain looks while the curator's expression tightened as doubts slowly grew. If nothing was discovered, Sophie would bear the greatest blame, and Agnes would likely be dismissed as a liar. Time seemed to slow. Every minute added more pressure to Sophie's shoulders. She was risking her reputation, her family relationships, perhaps even her future within the monarchy. She could almost feel the growing skepticism around her. Failure would leave her branded as a reckless figure who had damaged the monarchy during one of its most fragile moments. Standing in the center of the drawing room, she carefully studied every detail, searching for the smallest irregularity. The house's complete normality had become its most suspicious feature.
One officer continued examining the villa's original architectural drawings, their pages yellowed with age. He frowned, looked over them again, then suddenly stopped. There was a subtle inconsistency beneath the kitchen and pantry. Appeared a section of floor space marked on the original plans, but missing from every later version, an empty area sealed off after construction.
He immediately called Sophie over. The team gathered in the kitchen. Hidden behind a large wine cabinet, they discovered a small steel door built flush into the wall, nearly impossible to notice, securely locked and expertly concealed. It led downward into a space that officially did not exist. Sophie instantly knew they had found what they were looking for. The air inside the kitchen became unbearably heavy. They were no longer searching for missing valuables. They were standing before physical evidence of a conspiracy. Sophie gave the order. One officer carefully worked on the lock using a specialized tools. The sharp scrape of metal echoed through the silent house.
When the lock finally released, Sophie did not move immediately. She took a slow breath, preparing herself for whatever lay beneath. She looked across her team. Every trace of uncertainty had disappeared, replaced by tense anticipation. All of them knew that beyond the steel door waited the truth behind Queen Camilla's hidden ambitions. The air inside the hidden vault beneath Tom Parker Bowles's villa had grown heavy and suffocating. The tension reached its highest point when the unmistakable sound of royal vehicles arrived outside, followed by King Charles and Princess Anne entering the house. The appearance of the two most powerful members of the monarchy transformed the dim basement into a silent chamber of judgment. King Charles descended the stairs with a face as hard as stone, his eyes cold and unreadable. Princess Anne followed closely behind, known throughout her life for never tolerating wrongdoing. Sophie quietly stepped aside, allowing the king and his sister an unobstructed view of the evidence.
Charles approached the velvet-covered table where the official jewel box rested in silence. He touched nothing. Instead, his eyes slowly moved across every stolen relic, the ceremonial coronets, the historic brooches, and the small silver hairbrush worn smooth by years in his mother's hand. Recognition came instantly, along with deep pain. Although his face remained controlled, the slight drop of his shoulders revealed a betrayal more painful than words.
Princess Anne required no explanation. She recognized every object immediately treasures that had accompanied her mother throughout decades of royal duty. Her face showed no surprise, only quiet, unwavering anger. To her, this was a violation of Queen Elizabeth's memory itself, an unforgivable act of betrayal. She gave Sophie a single solemn nod, silently, confirming that every accusation had been correct. After the King and Princess Anne had examined everything, Sophie signaled to the protection officers.
Agnes, now dressed in a clean uniform, was escorted inside. She entered trembling but standing tall, fear still visible in her eyes, balanced by the pride of having chosen truth over safety. Standing before the king she had faithfully served for decades, she silently indicated the exact location where she had overheard the conversation and carefully reenacted Queen Camilla's secret instructions through simple, deliberate gestures. The quiet bravery of this lifelong servant, surrounded by the kingdom's highest figures, became a powerful image of loyalty confronting betrayal. Crushed beneath the overwhelming weight of undeniable evidence and the king's presence, Tom Parker Bowles finally broke. Since Charles had arrived, he had remained under guard in one corner of the vault. The arrogance and hostility he had directed towards Sophie disappeared completely. Sweat covered his forehead as his body trembled. Any remaining attempt to resist faded without a word. There was nowhere left to escape.
He was escorted out of the basement and taken directly to Buckingham Palace. Inside a private Privy Council chamber, facing the king and his closest advisors, Tom's resistance finally collapsed.
At last, through trembling hands, broken gestures, and barely audible words, he confessed everything. The relics had never been hidden merely for protection. The entire operation had been a calculated political plan directed by Queen Camilla herself. By keeping the highest symbols of royal authority under her control, she intended to preserve absolute leverage against any future shift in influence or public support. If the balance of power ever turned against her, she would still possess the physical symbols that carried royal legitimacy and authority.
When his confession ended, the chamber fell into a silence heavier than stone. The truth stood undeniable before everyone present. King Charles slowly closed his eyes, absorbing the full weight of what he had heard. The web of secrecy had finally been destroyed. Though delayed and deeply painful, justice had at last been served. Following Tom Parker Bowles' devastating confession, Buckingham Palace was enveloped in a cold, uneasy silence. For 3 days and 3 nights, King Charles remained in seclusion with his closest legal advisors, Princess Anne and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, confronting an unprecedented crisis of royal honor. The final decision had to uphold justice, protect Queen Elizabeth's legacy, and preserve enough dignity to safeguard the monarchy itself. At last, the king issued a final ruling under the highest level of secrecy. Queen Camilla was instructed to return every concealed relic immediately and without exception. Under the direct supervision of Princess Anne and Sophie, everything recovered from the hidden vault was transported back to the royal strongrooms and secured in its rightful place once again. In addition, Camilla permanently lost any future unsupervised access to the crown's symbolic treasures. Her influence within the family suffered a quiet but devastating blow. Although the public never learned of the scandal, everyone inside the palace understood what had happened. The Queen Consort's standing had been permanently damaged by personal ambition. Tom Parker Bowles, the man who had carried out the plan, faced far more severe consequences. During a closed royal proceeding, he was stripped of every unofficial title, privilege, and benefit connected to the royal family. At the king's request, imprisonment was avoided to spare the monarchy further embarrassment, but Tom's reputation was completely destroyed. Stories of greed and betrayal quietly spread through high society and the carefully controlled media. He became an outcast, his name forever associated with disgrace.
Sophie, however, emerged with her moral standing stronger than ever. The king privately recognized her as the true protector of his mother's legacy, while Princess Anne, whose respect was never easily earned, gave her a level of trust more valuable than any formal honor. Sophie's public reputation and charitable influence continued to grow. She was now regarded as the very symbol of integrity, courage, and unwavering loyalty to Queen Elizabeth's memory. Within the royal family, her position changed from a quietly dependable figure to an essential guardian of conscience.
Agnes, the loyal maid who had risked everything, also received the recognition she deserved. Through Sophie's recommendation, the king awarded her a generous private pension, along with a senior role overseeing the care of the royal historic collections. More valuable than either reward, however, was the respect she earned among the palace staff. The quiet story of the maid who dared defend the crown's history became a lasting legend, strengthening belief in loyalty and tradition whenever it was retold.
The story ended with a fragile sense of peace returning. The priceless relics, carefully catalogued once again, were restored to their rightful vaults under tighter security than ever before. The incident left a lasting wound within the royal family, but it also reinforced one unforgettable truth. The legacy of the crown does not belong to personal ambition, nor can it be controlled by temporary power. It belongs to duty to history and to unwavering devotion to the principles that have upheld the monarchy for generations. Justice had prevailed, and although the truth remained hidden from the public, it had forever changed the balance of power inside the palace. After hearing this story, do you believe King Charles made the right decision by resolving the matter privately to protect the dignity of the royal family? Or do you think it was a weak compromise over Queen Camilla's actions?
Share your opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. And be sure to click the next video on your screen. You won't want to miss it.